So what I was realizing as I was doing some Pangar trial runs this morning was how much nuance and specific things that need to go correctly for your Pangar trial run to be one of the best. Because even if you don't really know what you're doing, you could easily get a sub 1 minute, 50 second-ish time. But once you start getting into that 40, 30 second range, that's when things kind of get more nuanced. So first of all, for the item loadout, instead of an Aether Drive Tonic, which you would normally be using, you would run an Inspiring Pylon instead. It's just slightly better, and if everything goes correctly, you can stay in the pylon the whole time. Before you even enter the arena, you need to jump at a time where Pangar can do an interrupt. The specifics of which are going to depend on your ping, your servers, and how long you waited in the airship and before jumping. Most likely, you are not going to want to jump before the timer at the bottom reaches 29:53. If you queued immediately in the airship, you might want to wait until about 29:50. You're just trying to maximize the chances it's actually going to do an interrupt instead of the tail flip attack. As you land, you are going to want to put down your Inspiring Pylon. You're kind of far away, so you don't really lose anything substantial here, but one of the reasons why Repeaters has always done kind of good on this trial is you can preemptively get some Berserker stacks while Pangar is charging up its interrupt. This is something you can kind of do on every trial. You're like, oh hey, I can get Berserker when it's doing this, and I can maintain Berserker when it's doing this. Even if it's not within maximum damage range, it's not entirely pointless to keep shooting it. And here specifically, you're going to want to hit it 4 or 5 times. Either I think is really correct. If you hit it 4 times when you're running Pulse plus 6, that first Revenant Tendril will get a hit sync with your Pulse. But if you hit it 5 times, then every Revenant Tendril is going to get an extra 2% damage. But if you're going for the number 1 speedrun, then 5 is better because you are going to be relying on your Revenant just critting anyway. So 4 for consistency, 5 for RNG grinding. But immediately after you get these 4 or 5 Berserker stacks, you need to do a 180 and use your Revenant. You not only need it to interrupt, but you need it to get every single tendril to hit. A little easier said than done, and doing this properly can lead to you being inches from death when you actually survive. To get these 5 tendrils to hit, you're going to want to walk forward and to the right a bit as you are shooting those 4 or 5 Berserker stacks, and then as you do your 180, you're going to want to aim a little bit to the left of the waterfall in the back. It is somewhat consistent, but if you take too long to line up where you are aiming your Revenant, then you are going to die. But after all of that, ideally you have your Pangar somewhat close to your pylon, and you have interrupted it, and you're ready to actually do an attempt. While it's down, you want to get an empowered reload and use your lantern. You're also pumping a few shots into its back until you can get the marksman chamber to land on the leg. And you need to do this earlier than you can even see the leg. Once you have it marked, it's going to stay visible that whole time, so you can just shoot away. Then, when exactly you do your second Revenant is going to depend on how many tendrils you got to hit in the beginning. If you got all 5 of them to hit, then you can do it pretty much right away, but ideally you are hit syncing it with a pulse. But if you didn't get all 5 to hit, then you do need to wait a little bit, ideally after Pangar does an extra attack maybe. This is because you want to die before the second Revenant expires, so you need the maximum orbs here. But if you don't have the maximum orbs, then you need to wait a little bit, which will extend how much time you have in the Revenant state. But if you didn't hit all of your tendrils in the beginning, then you probably are not having a great run anyway. But with a properly timed second Revenant, once again making sure it hits all 4 of its tendrils, you need to ideally aim it toward the face as well, so it has a little bit of damage on the face for later. Ideally, that left leg is going to be very close to breaking, and it should start to do its enrage animation, but you should break that leg soon after. Then you immediately need to start shooting the other leg. Important note, if you're using recycle here, there is a chance that you could end up hitting the body. Even if it looks like you're hitting the leg, it might just give you a body shot instead. That's obviously not good, especially if you're running 6 recycle, but you'll be in the clear once it actually stands up. And after it stands up, more shots in the leg, it's going to enrage, and you are going to want to die on the enrage. What's scary is that after you die, Pangar is most likely going to want to turn around and back away because it just doesn't know how to pathfind to you, and hopefully you're going to be able to get that part break before it tries to do that. And you kind of just need some crits to happen here because you're not marking the second leg, and you don't use your Embermane Lantern here either because it's not ready yet. So it's quite important that you continuously focus hitting the leg and only the leg. And this would be the case even if you weren't using recycle, but hopefully you're getting that leg break very soon into the tragic echo period. And once you do, you're going to mark the face and you're going to hit that until it dies. But especially if you're using recycle now, you are going to want to save that Revenant that that you have in the Tragic Echo state until later. But even if you don't end up using Recycle, you do still want to save it for later because Revenant will reset your precision sight stacks, which you are going to be using whether you're using Recycle or not. But if you're successfully able to do all of these things and crit in the process, then congratulations, you have yourself a successful Pangar trial run. Now I've talked a bit about using Recycle versus not using Recycle, but unfortunately the main thing it looks to try to replace here is Predator. Your first thought would maybe be Berserker, but you do need 50 HP at the end when you need to die, because Pangar's Enrage Bubble is going to deal 82 damage, so you actually do need Berserker on this trial. And you think maybe you get rid of Overpower, but it's going to be in an Overpower state the entire time, so there's really no point in doing that. And Cunning, Pulse, and Catalyst are kind of untouchable. Maybe you could argue that Catalyst wouldn't be as necessary at +6, but I don't think that's the case. The window for killing this thing this fast is already tight enough as it is at +6, and at points during the run you are feeling pretty slow anyway because you only have your Captain's Grip speed and it's not always going to be up. But between using Predator or Recycle, there really isn't a huge difference, and you're kind of seeing that in how the times have gone so far. But when you think about it, it kind of makes sense. The downside to Predator is that you lose it during your Tragic Echo state, but I mean obviously it's not as big of a deal when that happens because you just gained a 100% damage bonus. However, Recycle also does have a downside. It's that you intentionally are resetting it several times. You're shooting in the body at first after you get the interrupt, then you shoot the leg, then the other leg, and then the face. But you're also resetting it when you're using your Revenant, meaning you're ideally going to want to be using Revenant just as the part you're on is going to break anyway. Or once again, you are going to want to use the final Revenant as late as possible. But it's the same issue as Revenant resetting precision sights. But it does make sense that Predator is relatively close by. You are getting more damage on the attacks for the start of your precision sights. It's just by the end that Recycle is better. But the main thing that keeps times relatively close to each other is that Revenant is going to get the bonus from Predator. The first two at the beginning will, the last one won't, but getting Recycle on 1, maybe 2 tendrils if you're lucky, is not quite as good as getting a 35% damage bonus on the entire length of the Revenant. So even though you're doing more damage elsewhere, the Revenant is that important that Predator is still relatively close to Recycle on here. So it would seem that because you need that Berserker and you need that Rage because of the Tragic Echo, that Pangar trial really didn't progress at all from gaining Recycle. And that's really weird because I would have thought this would have ended up being the best trial for Recycle, but it might just end up being the worst. Because even if you do enough runs with no Recycle, you can do what Recycle is doing right now. I don't know, maybe it's more consistent. Top speedrunners, comment your experience with it so far down below. But in order to utilize it, it basically seems to be either replace Predator or you do a build that's like 6 Catalyst, 6 Cunning, 6 Pulse, 6 Predator, 3 Overpower, 3 Recycle, 3 Berserker, 3 Rage. But the main thought about that is the 30% you're going to gain from Recycle going to end up being more than the 20% you would get from Overpower? Because again, Overpower is only going to be down for maybe a second or two during the fight. And even if that does end up being better, it's going to be what, 3 or 4% better overall? So you might get a half a second out of it. I think at this point overall, the exact build you're going to be running with matters a lot less than the just getting lucky crits aspect of it. Who knows? We might even see in the top 3, one person runs 3 Overpower, one person runs 6 Overpower, 6 Recycle, one person runs 6 Overpower, 6 Predator. I really don't know how this trial is going to end up, but what I do know is that this trial is surprisingly complex. Evidenced by, I've been talking for over 8 minutes at this point, and I thought this would be like a 2-minute video. So I'm gonna shut up now. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for listening to me ramble. Drop a like for me, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. If you want to support me directly, consider hitting the join button to become a channel member for 99 cents, or buy some merch from the TheMrTrails.store, or use the code TheMrTrails on the Epic Game Store, wherever you might be, in Fortnite, in the game store itself, or in Dauntless. But that'll be it for me. I have been Trevor, I go by the TheMrTrails, and I will catch you guys next time.